And today we're going to talk all about finding your sweet spot. And this is an important part of starting your journey because your sweet spot is going to be your consistent dose for the next 3 months. And so, in that sense, it's really important to get clear now so that you can move forward and not have to think about how much should I be taking, right? And I'm going to talk about what a sweet spot is and also really how you can find it because everyone's sweet spot is very different. So, just to begin, people ask me, well, what is a sweet spot? How do I know what my sweet spot is? And I encourage you to find that feeling of the sweet spot that feels good to you. For me, the way I define the sweet spot is that space where the Goldilocks effect, right? Where it's not too much and not too little. So you want it to be in between those places where it's a functional dose, which means that you can live your daily life totally fine. And you do notice a little bit of an effect. So what does a sweet spot feel like? It feels like this. First thing in the morning, you take your dose. You set your intention, you start your day. Usually it takes about an hour to kick in. So then after an hour, maybe you notice like a perk in your mood. Or maybe you notice like a little bit of energy, or you're more relaxed or more present or focused, right? Like if you don't know the benefits to look for, there is a video in the frequently asked questions section that talks about the benefits. And so that might, you might feel some of those benefits, but it's so subtle. It's almost like you don't even fully, like it's in the background, right? It's not like, whoa, I'm hallucinating or something, right? Like it's very subtle. And so it's on that subtle spectrum where you can actually do whatever you normally would do, right? Which means, your job, whatever, right? And the thing about the sweet spot is that the way I like to describe it is you have that feeling in the morning. You go on with your day. You go on and you're busy, you're doing your thing, you're whatever. And at some point in your day, you might notice like, wow, today's been a good day, right? Like I'm noticing I'm in the flow today. Things are moving. This is great. And then you might even forget that you took your microdose. And you might think to yourself, man, why do I feel so good today? And then all of a sudden you realize, oh yeah, I took that microdose this morning, right? And that's kind of the feeling where it's so subtle you can actually forget that you even took it, but it does have a noticeable effect, okay? Now, I've taken microdoses that are on the stronger side, like let's say 200 milligrams, and it's like enjoyable. It's still a microdose, but it's kind of too strong to be like doing computer work. It's kind of, the dose is like, man, I want to sit and meditate or do some art or get out in nature. And so it's this like, it's too strong for me to be a functional dose. It's still a microdose, but it's like a bit too much for a functional dose. And so then I would bring it back, right, and do less. So how do you find your sweet spot? So week number 1, I'm really going to encourage you to find that sweet spot and to play around. First of all, some people really wait for they're like, oh man, I want to wait for my day off. I don't want it to be too strong. If you're nervous about it, start really low. Like 50 milligrams maybe is too strong. Maybe if you're nervous, you start with 25 milligrams. That's really the lowest dose anyone's going to take. 25 milligrams is tiny. I usually recommend starting with 50, but this is for people who are very nervous, like, ooh, I don't know, right? And it's normal. It's a new thing, it's mushrooms, it's right? Like I get it. And so what I'm saying is like, don't wait for that perfect day because for so many people, that perfect day never comes and a month goes by and they haven't started and they're missing out, right? So just jump in. And I encourage you, no matter what protocol you choose for the frequency, start with the Stamets, which is 5 days on and 2 days off, right? So that's because you can really play around with your dose and get a good gauge day after day. So you're going to take a dose every day for 5 days for this first week. And you can continue that. Watch the other video if you haven't seen it about finding your creating your container and finding that frequency, the protocol. But this week you're going to do it for 5 days. And the first day you're going to start with 50 milligrams. And once again, if you're nervous, just start with 25. And then if that feels good, and that's like you get that sweet spot effect that I talked about, okay, 50 milligrams is your sweet spot. Carry that on for the week. And if on day 5 it's kind of tapered off and you're not feeling it as much, then maybe increase it that day to 100 and see how that works. Because sometimes after a few days of just starting, we build like that slight buffer tolerance, and we might need to increase a little bit. And then, so each day, if 50 milligrams is not enough, each day increase it by 50. So day 1, 50 milligrams, it's like, it didn't do it. Next day, I want you to take 100 milligrams. So that's twice as much. Okay, and then if that's still not strong enough, increase it to 150 milligrams. Increase it up to 200 milligrams. Some people actually need to take 250 or 300, especially if they have, if they're taking antidepressants, or if they're smoking a lot of cannabis, or if they just don't have a sensitivity to these things. You might need to increase it. But this is generally the range, okay? This is the range that most people find that sweet spot. And so, you might find it's 75 milligrams for you, or 175 or 125. You're going to find your range. And I encourage you to figure this out in the first week, so that if you're buying your microdoses from someone else, you can get some idea of what you should be purchasing in the future. And if you're making your own, before you make a big, huge batch of 200 milligrams, figure this out. And then you'll know, okay, I need to make 200 milligram capsules. But if you make a bunch of these and your sweet spot is 50, well, now you've got doses that are way too strong for your system. Okay? And understand that your sweet spot may change a little bit. Some people do find that after a month of microdosing, they will become, it's kind of funny. Some people find that they get a tolerance to it and they need to increase. Some people actually find that they become more attuned and sensitive to the medicine, and they actually have to take a little bit less. Okay, so just throughout your journey, be mindful that it's okay to change your dose if you need, and play around with it. Okay, and so that's really the sweet spot. I hope this was helpful. I hope you understand how to find this, and I really encourage you this week, figure this out. It's going to make your journey a lot simpler, and it's going to take a lot of your anxiety about it off the table. You're just going to figure it out and be like, okay, my sweet spot is this, and that's how I'm going to move forward. So let us know what's your sweet spot. Maybe you already know what it is, and we'll see you in the next video.